Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Benny Guzman. I am the current president of Latin American Student Organization, LASO. I want to thank you all for being here for our keynote for Hispanic Heritage Month featuring Prisca, Dorcas, Mojica. First, I want to just give a few thanks and a few shout outs to the people who kind of helped make this possible. I want to first of all thank my LASO core. It's been kind of crazy trying to get all these events going on, and especially having to do it so quickly in the school year, that a lot of the events wouldn't be possible without them. So I want to give them a big round of applause and thank them for that, because it's been crazy. I would also like to thank the Alana Multicultural Center, including Crystal Borzaqua and Dean Thomas Crusoto. They've been really helpful in kind of doing the logistical things and making sure we have the money to bring people and kind of do the events we wanted to do. So thank y'all. I also want to thank our supporters. There's so many and they're so various that it's kind of hard to name all of you. And also I just want to thank all y'all for being here and for celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month with us. And yeah. I have my other core members, Estrella Rodriguez, do a brief introduction.
So we're really excited to have Prisca here today. She is a self-described chonga, theologian, mujerista, feminista, and ethicist. She's the girl your mom warned you about. She was born in Managua, Nicaragua, and graduated with a master's from Vanderbilt University. And she now holds a lot of hats. She's a writer at Philadelphia Printworks, a freelance writer for Vivala, a columnist and editor at Chica magazine, a blogger for the Huffington Post, and the founder of the popular blog Latina Rebels. Her interests are within biopolitics as it relates to Latina embodiment, specifically concerning models of conquerable flesh around narratives of naturalization for women of color. Her work is about reclaiming and upholding embodied resistance, particularly within Chonga and Chola subcultures. Her blog is described as empowering fully present Latinidad, one Latina at a time, by disrupting the binary expectations that are placed in Latinas' bodies and minds. So please help me to welcome Prisca Dorcas Mojica Rodriguez.
Hi. Okay, so I want to start it off by reading a piece just to kind of centralize what I'm trying to address when I'm talking to you all, and things will flow from there. So I wrote this a few months ago, but it was kind of a culmination of a lot of feelings I had while in a white serving institution, while I got my graduate degree, and it just kind of bubbled up a year after. So some days whiteness will make you forget that your mom is brilliant and strong because of the accent in her tongue and her cultural differences. Some days whiteness will make you forget that your dad is hardworking and resilient because of the color of his skin and his lack of formal education. Some days whiteness will make you forget that you are beautiful and capable because of the barrio you come from and the clothes that you wear. Some days whiteness will make you forget that you are smart and that you're worthy because you stutter when you have to speak English in front of people. Some days whiteness will make you forget that your music is an important contribution to society because it's loud and they call it messy and they don't understand it. Some days whiteness will make you forget that your abuela is sharp and unstoppable because of how she upholds your cultura's religions. Some days whiteness will make you feel like you're not good enough to go to their schools and will make you question everything. But it is because we're entering their spaces in masses and excelling, we are threatening to them. Now we're showing them what all this indigenous diaspora excellence looks like in their institutions, and they're going to try to make us forget who we are. Some days whiteness will make you forget that you are the sum of generational resistance, that you are the sun, the moon, and the stars, You have never stopped being great. Your ancestors have always been great. They just try to make us forget. They try to coerce us into corners, positions with fake titles, chairs with no power, nor influence, nor voice. But we're no longer satisfied with these fraudulent attempts of keeping us at bay. We are no longer satisfied of being lied to. We can see right through it all. But some days whiteness will try to make you forget that they do not care about us. But we have to remember the years of evidence and national traumas in our home countries that show us otherwise. Remember Chiquita Banana. Google Chiquita Banana. Remember the Panama Canal. Remember international trade policies like NAFTA and CAFTA. Remember the border walls, the syphilis experiments, and forced sterilizations. Remember who did nothing and enjoys the benefits that their whiteness affords them. Remember that our countries will never be lands of opportunities because they robbed us of that. Some days whiteness makes me feel inferior and dumb. It makes me feel like my own spirituality and my outer beauty is inferior. And I have to remind myself that brownness has always been brilliant and beautiful. I have to remind myself that the rest is a lie told by powerful white people meant to keep my people down and quiet and docile. We have to remember and remind each other. And that's why I'm here. We have to keep our heads high and walk through what feels like flames, the valley of bones. It feels excruciating, but we do this for our communities and we have a certain set of responsibilities. We do this for each other, and we do this in hopes that later generations of Latinx won't need these reminders. So the bulk of my work is kind of doing the thing that I needed to have done for me when I was a student. But I think I feel like I need to give people disclosures when I start talking, because there's like a lot of things I assume people just get. Like I'm like, oh yeah, they understand what I'm doing, because like subversively. But the more I do these talks, the more I realize that there's like a lot of stuff that I'm doing subversively that only I know I'm doing it subversively. So I feel like Latinx go into a lot of spaces, especially institutions like these. We're trying to get close to whiteness. I remember I went to seminary, and so we had a program just called HSP, so Hispanic Summer Program, just for the Latinos. We were so few, and we're like the smallest out of the minorities. We're the smallest of the minorities to attend seminaries in the United States. And so they get us together once a year, and they try to like get us to like read only Latinx theologians and ethicists and be taught by Latinx faculty, which a lot of us don't have like the opportunity to do that. And I was passing by a table, and there was like this faculty talking to a student. He was a PhD student, and she's like, you're gonna have to get rid of your accent if you want people to respect you. And I just like was walking through, and I was like, what the fuck? You know? Because like this is a real thought that has happened, but it just threw me because I was like, I thought, you all had to do that so that we didn't have to do that. Like I thought that you went in there to open the doors for us. But here you are telling us to get rid of our accents, to dress professionally, to get those degrees, to shut up and get the degree, and then eventually, like once you're tenured, then you can do the thing. It's like we need to like elevate ourselves to these people as if we're beneath them to begin with. And so even like, so I was in a class with one of the founders of my field. Like she's like a super badass, right? Her name is Maria Pilar Aquino. And there's a Chicana in the class, and she yawned, and she's like, she got mad. Like she was like, haha, don't yawn. She's like, they have been thinking we're lazy for hundreds of years, and you yawning is just reinforcing that. And I was just like, she's just tired. Like, we cannot be carrying this still, right? So We tell each other, get out of the barrios, get an education, right? But what's actually happened is that we've created this kind of educated Latinx who's really disconnected from our roots and really disconnected from our people, especially poor people in our communities. And so my argument is that it's gotten us nowhere. Yeah, you got that paper, but what about the rest of us? So wearing the suits didn't help us. Learning the language and stripping ourselves of our cultural brownness, our poverty, our raíces is not helping us. Donald Trump is still the Republicans' presidential candidate, and he has a lot of support. So none of those tricks that we were taught by our elders has done us any good. So I go into spaces and I curse. I will curse the entire time I'm here because too often we've been given this ethically skewed perspective of what it means to be a good person and a bad person. Like good people don't curse, or smart people don't curse, and dumb people curse, right? And we make these very binary categories, and when you're brown and you're cursing, you're not only assumed to be bad when you walk into a room, you're also assumed to be dumb, and then you're cursing and they're like, we knew it, right? I remember I started divinity school, which is when the first time I was around a lot of white people, and by the third time a white girl told me, I would never pick an argument with you. I'm so scared of you. And I was like, you don't know me. I could probably kick your ass. But you don't know that. You don't know where I come from. We're not friends like that. So that you have made this, you've made this assumption about me is purely based on how I look and what you think people like me do. Or even I was in one of the bars at Vanderbilt, in front of Vanderbilt, and I was just being a carefree girl. I was I'm having a good time. I'm just drinking. And I'm talking to these guys, and one of the guys, he's in the law school, and he's like, yeah, I'm in the law school, super showy, super proud, he's a Vanderbilt law student. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I'm in the grad program at Vanderbilt. He's like, show me your ID. And I was like, your mom? What? Why can't someone like me go into a space where you're allowed to exist? So they already think we're dumb, and they already think we're bad. So no amount of cursing or not cursing is going to make it better. So my cursing is political. It's a fuck you to those thoughts that I need to do a certain thing for me to be valid, for what's coming out of my mouth to count. I speak very colloquially. I've taken race theory classes. I've done the Feminist 101 to now you're a full-fledged feminist kind of thing, right? I've done the walk. I've read the books. I did my thesis, and I was like, what good is all this knowledge if my mom can't understand it? I want my mom to be able to come into these spaces and sit and understand everything that's coming out of my mouth. So when I'm talking, I'm very colloquial. And again, this is something that they've told us don't do because you got these degrees, you know all these terms, use them, and they're going to respect you more, and you're going to be, no. So I dress with my social markers as visible as possible. I don't cover up my tattoos. Somebody once said, and I have never verified this, but because of what I understand about these two people and every picture I've seen, it feels valid. But they said Malcolm X and MLK were both shot down wearing suits. So the idea that professional, if we dress professionally, they're going to respect us, it's an invalid thought, and I feel like a lot of us are starting to get that. Nobody said a mixed group of people and was like, what does professionalism look like to us? No. White men who have always been allowed to be professional, because we weren't always allowed to be in those spaces. Women were always allowed to be in those spaces. They're the ones who made the rules. Why are we all supposed to follow them? So I don't go into spaces to be respected just by my pure aesthetics. Because if I need to dress a certain way for you to respect me, then you're probably not even respecting me. It's a conditional respect, so I don't even want that. And especially women in the academy, the masculinization of intellectual womanhood is real. And there's a lot of research around like androgyny as a mode of dress for people who get to like explore their identity. And it's in the realm of the elites and the ability to do that. And so in the culture that I come from, so I come from the hood, and so there's cholas and las chicas, and I would identify with chongas, which is aesthetically very similar to las chicas or the feminine aspects of cholas. And our femininity is like currency in this subculture, and it's in the hood only. And so this sociologist wrote this thing, and she went into like a high school, and she's like, I want to know how girls are performing class in these situations. And she decided that las cholas and las chicas were, by not choosing to prioritize upper middle class like dress, they were, whether they knew it or not, resisting being whitewashed. So I've been told by mentors, don't wear makeup when you go speak at places, nobody's gonna respect you. And I'm like, but these are my class markers, and these are my social location markers that it's been so inherent in something that's been taught down to me in my context that it feels like it's erasing my identity. So I go into spaces because I want women of color, and women of color do this. They'll be like, yes, queen. And I'm like, yeah. And then white people are like, what the fuck are those heels you're wearing? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I resound with a particular group, and that is intentional to its core. I'm also, I story tell, so you'll notice as I'm talking, I tell a lot of stories. It's in my homage, is that the word? Okay, yeah, homage, okay. It's my homage to like our indigenous roots that is very much about storytelling. And I also don't have a linear logic. So like, you know that abuela that you talk to, and she's saying really poignant stuff, but you have to pay attention closely. And you don't know how it all made sense, but it all made sense somehow. That's non-linear logic. Linear logic is those people in school that are like, you want to make an argumentative point, here's your intro, here are your 3 points, and this is your conclusion. And we prioritize that. We think that's the only way to think. We think that's the only way to live. But our people have been, without going to classes, my mom didn't graduate high school and went to school in Nicaragua public school. She has been processing racism, she has been processing sexism, but because she doesn't have this linear logic, it's like dismissed. And so we're taught here in these spaces, like this is how you think, and this is what's prioritized, and all that's ever done for our communities is kept us silent and out of the picture. And so when I'm speaking, I'm like that abuela that's telling you stories, and it's all really important, and you need to pay attention, but you're gonna be like, wait, what the fuck happened? Right? But this is all intentional, because I can do the linear logic. We're taught that since like 3rd grade on. But it doesn't sound familiar to my context. And I've worked really hard to reclaim all these things that when we become civilized, they took from us. So my intentional practice of resistance to respectability politics is kind of in all of what you're going to see me talking and speaking and being, particularly in white serving institutions, because it kind of decentralizes the status quo. And it prioritizes a different narrative that we're not used to seeing. And it's supposed to, at its core, be about representation. To see a Latina like myself who might share a context to yours in like any platform. I don't like using podiums I just feel like there's a lot of implied power in those situations, and I don't like that dynamic, so hence I'm sitting, but there's still a power dynamic, but whatever, we can talk about it later. But it's very important for representation. The only representation I had of anybody like me ever was India Maria when I was growing up. And we all knew that she was dumb, she was funny, but she was not considered pretty. She was not considered, like, she wasn't bringing anything cool to the table. She wasn't, she could get fooled by anyone. And so I knew very well what everyone was supposed to think of someone like me. So, but I'm also very intentional about telling people this is my story. If you grow up in a context like me, and then I'll keep talking, because in these events too, people will be like, let's bring that Latino, and then they'll talk to the Latino population, and then that's it, we did it, right? Like, check. And then they forget that there's like a varied experiences. We don't all look alike, our cultures are not the same, our languages are not the same. I can say a word that is a curse word elsewhere. It just doesn't look and feel the same way at all in all our spaces. So I go into spaces and I'm like, this is what it looked like for me to grow up. And that's what Latina Rebels is supposed to be about for me, is about complexifying the many pieces that go into Latinidad for like one person. And like, I tell people, if you're scrolling through LR and you relate to everything, then you're like a super Latino, because there just isn't, like, I don't relate with everything. And I'm not even on board with all the opinions, but it's supposed to bring those varied perspectives. And somebody's gonna be like, yeah, I'm about that. So context is everything, and you'll notice it as I give my context. That's why I was like, oh, they're giving an intro. And I'm gonna introduce myself too. So I was born in Managua, Nicaragua. In Chico Pelon is the barrio that I was born in. It's pretty inundated with maras now. When I was growing up, there was a lot of maras, but I don't think we ever recognized that. I mean, when you grow up poor in a poor neighborhood, things aren't as dangerous as outsiders will perceive your neighborhood to be as dangerous. Like, I went to a public school that was like 5 blocks from my house, and we walked to the school and came back home. It was just kind of understood, like, you're a kid. My mom's like, be aware of your surroundings, run, be sharp. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, you know these things as a kid, and that's kind of your childhood, and it's not different or weird or whatever, because every other kid your age and you're 5 years old knows these rules. I grew up with, my parents are uneducated, religious, conservative, and I don't say any of that with the negative connotations that usually that comes with. I think we forget to kind of take the layers of colonialism from a lot of that stuff. It's just a fact. My parents aren't educated, and they're really religious and also really conservative. I was born during the embargo that the United States placed on my country. And it's because, like, the US does this really cool thing where they go into other countries and they're like, we don't like what you're doing, so we're gonna like fuck it up until you start agreeing with us. And it turns out that they had to take the embargo out of place because it was in violation of international laws. Turns out, the US isn't so nice to other countries. I was born after my country's civil war. And like I said, I went to public school. If you know anything about our countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, a lot of people go to private school. It's really not common for you to go to public school. Public schools are reserved for the kids who beg in the streets. Public schools are where the least of the least go to school. And they're not meant to actually teach you, it's just where you send your kids. So I went to public school from kindergarten to 2nd grade, and I knew from a very young age what starvation looked like. I knew from a very young age what it was like to see my friends in class and then not see them for weeks and see them at the corner begging and then see them back in class. I remember when the kids started smelling glue, that was like a thing that started happening. And I remember I was like in kindergarten. I have a very vivid memory. We were doing something, and the kid next to me is like, you want to smell? And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, the innocence of like, no, I'm good. And my mom had heard about it. The teacher told my mom that there was like a thing happening. My mom heard about it, and she's like, don't do that. And so I was like, okay, that's bad. Got it. But I mean, as you grow older, you realize that the smelling glue is like curbing a lot of their hunger pangs. So then you're like, oh, that's not bad. Fucking everything else around them is bad because kids shouldn't be starving anywhere. My dad made about $200 a month for a family of 5. And so it's really funny because I went on an immersion trip to, my Vanderbilt degree took me on an immersion trip to Mexico. We went on the border. Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? I thought it would be a phenomenal experience because I was in seminary, right? And so I was like, I'm going with these people that I want to get ordained. This is going to be amazing. Like, I wonder what kind of analysis they're going to have. It was just like a pity party. Like, how could white people do this? Walls are sad. And then they go home and they're like, Cinco de Mayo. And they forget all about what, like, anything important. And so that happened. And I went on this immersion trip. And they're like, the thing with immersion trips, I think, is that there's like no real critical analysis of stuff. Like, I remember they gave us, like, everybody got like $50. And they're like, this is what someone makes in a week. Go to the store. And they took us to like a supermercado, right? Like, go spend it at the store and see how awful this is. And I was like, that's how much my dad made. And we never went to the store. The store was for like the rich people. You went to the mercado and you like swindled your way into like a lot of food and it covered. So I was like, this immersion trip sucks because nobody fucking comes here. But okay, got it. Noted, don't go on another immersion trip because then you're like the token brown girl. I was like mad the whole time that everything's fucked up. So I grew up malnourished because obviously we were really poor. I had hepatitis, varicella, cholera. I was born with jaundice. So I have a very particular, like a very interesting relationship with the healthcare system in our countries, and I write about it a lot. I don't believe in voluntarism, but American doctors were the only ones who kind of gave me the nutrients I needed. I remember I was getting shots at one point because I was so small that's how I was getting any nutrients I needed into my body, and so they gave my parents a bunch of shots, and that's like how I made it out of 5 and 6 years old. So I have a very soft spot for Doctors Without Borders or all this other stuff that can be really problematic, but at the end of the day, it's saving a lot of people's lives. That it has a very real impact. I hate voluntarists, though, because I'm like, your tree didn't do shit, and I'm glad you spent a lot of time digging that hole, but we could have done that without you. So we migrated to the U.S., and the migration was not something anybody wanted. It was something that needed to happen in my family. And I remember my mom really didn't want to. Like, I remember she's like, esos niños en los Estados Unidos. She's like, son malcriados. She's like, they don't love God. Those kids are bad. They're all doing bad stuff. They disrespect la cultura. They disrespect the parents. And I was just like, oh my God, those kids are bad. Like, I went to school and I was like, these are bad kids. Like, I was like, the U.S. is not where you want to go. But we had to. And I was supposed to go to 3rd grade, but the teacher, like, they had our names, like a little name tents around the whole room. And she's like, okay, pick your whatever, go find your, and I just like sat anywhere. So I was like, I didn't know how to, I didn't know what my name looked like because I didn't know how to read because I went to public school in Nicaragua. So after 3 attempts, she's like, maybe she didn't hear me. And then she said in Spanish a few times. She's like, okay, she doesn't know how to read. She doesn't. And she asked me, do you know your alphabet? And I didn't know my alphabet in English or Spanish. And so they sent me to 1st grade. And I was 8 years old. So I've always been like a non-traditional student. Like, people are like, oh, you're 26 and starting your master's. You're like a non-traditional. I'm like, fuck you, no. Like, I've like done the track. It's just this is what colonialism looks like. But okay, I'm a non-traditional student. So in my actually my school, in elementary school, we were in a barrio. So like any kind of zoning happens, the barrio and the elementary school in the barrio looked like the barrio. So it was primarily immigrants at that time. It was in the Nicaraguan barrio. And half of the day they taught us in Spanish because none of the kids could understand, and then the other half they taught us in English. Not until my dad got like a raise and we moved to like another neighborhood did I have to learn English. So I didn't actually start learning English till I was like 11 years old. Because whenever it was like the other half of the day, everyone just like zoned out because you're like, whatever. whatever you're saying, we got it, okay, cool, right? But it's like first and second grade, so it's like a lot of coloring and alphabet. As long as you know it in Spanish, they keep bumping you up. But I got to another neighborhood, and that's when I started to kind of read in English. In Miami, when we moved to Miami, it's the second biggest hub of Nicaraguenses in the United States. And the population of Latinx in Miami is 73%. And we lived in Pequeña Nicaragua, or Pequeña Nica. And so I thought we were like filthy rich. Like we had AC. We were in an apartment complex that had a pool. Like we got an ear infection because we were like jumping in that pool like in the dead winter. I mean, Miami winter is like 70, but still, we're like little skinny kids just like jumping in this water because we're like rich, you know? And like there were several moments that I had that like, oh, we're poor, but that was like way later. We came under like a visiting visa and then kind of overstayed that. And we became residents eventually, like some American family. It was just like, my dad's a pianist, that's like his trade. He's a pastor, but he plays for churches, and so he started playing for this white church, and they were like, we'll get you papers. And so we did that, and that's how we became residents. I'm not a citizen. I don't have any desire to become a citizen. That oath you have to take to become a citizen is the devil itself, as far as I'm concerned. The relinquishing of your ties and your loyalties to your country of birth is not something I'm willing to do as somebody who was born during an embargo, and I know what the U.S. can do to countries. And if I want to send stuff to, because only my parents came over here, if I want to send stuff to my tias and my cousins, I'm going to do that, and then it's treason. So I'm like, yeah, you can keep your naturalization. It doesn't feel that natural. So I graduated from high school at 19. I was turning 20 that summer because my schooling history. And I went to an HSI, so Hispanic Serving Institution, FIU. It has primarily first gens, and it's like 85% Latinos. It's a 48,000 student body, and 85 of them look and act and feel and eat like you. So it feels really good, but you don't know it until you leave, right? And when I graduated, nobody told me, like everybody's like, oh God. Everybody's like, get a degree, whatever, that's what you're supposed to do, right? And then I got a degree, and nobody told me that, like, you don't have a job afterward. I had, like, an English degree, a major in English, and a minor in ballet education. And they're like, you want to make $10 an hour teaching ballet? And I was like, what the fuck? Okay. Got it. That's a lie. Especially, I think, right, like, I feel like people are inherited jobs, or people know people. That's a lot of how that happens. Or somebody connects you to a person. Something like that happens for you to get a job when you get out of undergrad. Or you have like a degree like teaching, you know, where like you can do it. Like we have literature, it's just kind of like, okay, you know a lot of Shakespeare. Cool. So, when you know a lot of thugs and cholas and preachers, your options are limited. So I was like, I need to go to school. My parents told me, if you want to go to school, no, they're like, you're never leaving this house because you're only leaving when you're married. I told you my parents are conservative and they're really religious. So I was dating this guy for like 5 months, and I was like, you want to get married? And I proposed on the telephone, and we did. And I applied to one school. I Googled, like, schools that don't require the GRE, right? Because the GRE is meant to weed us out. It's meant to keep us out of the equation. Like people who didn't grow up with a lot of books, people whose parents might have not gone to college, people who have had to read out loud stuff for a while before they got it. It's not meant for us, right? So I was like, I'm not going to do this shit, so I'm going to do this shit some other way. And I Googled it, and I found Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt surprisingly had this program, and I was like, okay, I can do it. I can do this. I had no idea what Vanderbilt was, no clue. Like, I was that first gen. I just Googled schools that don't require GRE. Vanderbilt was like 5, And I was like, heard that in Gossip Girl. Let's do it, right? Like 100%. Okay, I'm gonna do the thing. I applied, and turns out like Nashville has a 4% Latino population, and schools like Vanderbilt are like dying to get brown people in there. So I was like, in. And mind you, I graduated with my bachelor's. I was in the honors college. I graduated with a 3.98. I was like a good student in a state school. And then I went to this private university. And I was like, holy shit. Like I remember, okay, so Greg back there, you can wave. We started the same year. And he probably remember, like the teachers would assign, like you get your syllabus of all your assignments and it'd be like, this is your essay like in a month from now. And I'm like, I'm gonna get started. I was being good. I was like, I got you. I'm gonna be the top of this class. I got it. I was like, and people would be like, why are you working on your, I'm like, shh. I'm about to ace this school, right? I turned in my first essay. I got a D back. I'd never seen a D since like first grade when I didn't know what an A looked like. I was like, what the fuck? I cried so much. That first year, and I was on a scholarship, that first year I got straight C's from all my classes. And I remember being told the second year, so the second semester, the first year, I remember being told, like, you need to go to the writing center, like, this is it. You just need to go to the writing center and, like, you'll get it, like, it'll be okay. And I went to the writing center, and the writing center was like, we don't do grammar. We're not grammar checkers. And I was like, okay, where do I go? And they're like, go to the International Students Writing Center. I'm like, okay, I go to the International Students Writing Center. True story. And I'm like, okay, here's my stuff. They're like, no, you speak too much English for this writing center. And I was like, what the fuck do I do now? So I went crying to my professor, and I went crying to the admissions director who like assured me I belonged there, right? And I was like, why did you accept me here? Why did you bring me into this school and lie to me and told me I could do this and then just leave me out to dry? Why did you set me up to fail? Because you wanted other people to feel better compared to me? Was I supposed to be the lowest in your scale? I was so heartbroken because I was working so hard. I was reading twice as much as anybody else. I was reading the material out loud. I was reading additional material to explain what the fuck I had just read. Like I was in it. And I wasn't getting any of it, and I was dying. And I started Latina Rebels. Out of that, why the fuck is this happening? Why am I failing out of school? Why are my friends making me feel like I don't belong? Why do people keep welcoming me to America? Like, a lot of stuff started happening, and I started to feel like there was nowhere to go, and so I started to go online. I found Latino Rebels and News Taco and, like, Pocho and, like, a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, Ingosamos, and I'm like, yeah, I feel it, I'm here. But I was like, but I still don't see myself. I don't see a picture of, like, how complicated this is. Like, I was just reading a lot of news, and there was, like, a lot of the Arizona stuff was happening back then, and so I was like, it was important and it was empowering, but I wanted to see how complicated all is. It isn't just immigration, and it isn't just being undocumented. It isn't like we don't have two narratives and that's it. I was like, I'm a million things. I'm going through a million things, and I am Latina. There was no organization that had my voice as a woman. And so I was like, I'm gonna start this shit. So May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2013. Yeah, I was really mad because I was like sick of this Cinco de Mayo bullshit. And so I was like, I'm starting this. And I got, it was me and three of my other friends. One of them was my little sister. One was Guatemalan, another one was Cuban. My little sister, Nicaragüense, but she's adopted, but she's still Nicaragüense. And myself. And we all kind of had different backgrounds. One of them was working in tech in Seattle. One was still in college. She was in her late 20s, and she was working in retail. She was in management. My little sister was just starting college. I was in grad school in the South. So I was like, this is as varied as it gets in our experiences, so let's do it. And they were posting really cool shit on their own Facebook. So I was like, why don't you just like put it here? And so somebody can just like, somebody like me who really needed these things can just go and like that stuff and just start scrolling. So they don't have to follow all these other platforms. Eventually, life happens and a lot of people just got busy. And so I started meeting like followers and fans. And so all the current rebeldes are all fans that I've met. We've gotten really drunk together and just had an amazing time. And I was like, hey girl, you wanna do this, right? And then we did, and it was great. And so everybody kind of brings their own thing. They're educators and poets, and some of them are mixed. One's Afro-Latina, and it's just like, it's a complicated and very beautiful thing. And my focus lately has been like this woke brown girl. And so I want to keep exploring what it means to be, like the intersection of race, class, and gender. So specifically what it means to be brown, poor, and female as a Latina. And so I write a lot of what I do. And even when I post anything, it's just like me right now. Like I'm very intentional about like, it isn't everybody, and I don't even like signing. I've told them like sign so that your words like are yours, but I don't even sign stuff anymore. I'm just like, I'll put like, a recent one was like, if he's fine, educated. Like, I don't know what it said, but it was like, insert here. And she had her legs open like a full straddle. And I was like, currently. Like, I don't even sign, but that's like important. That's part of my respectability politics, like, fuck you to that. And then we'll like write about like Black Lives Matter, because they do, right? And so it's important to kind of hold all this whatever. But I focus on this woke brown girl, and I never tell people I'm an expert, because I think a lot of times we get degrees and then we go back to the barrio and we're like, let me tell you now. And nobody's fucking listening. They're like, esa fresa se fue, and now trying to come back, tell me a thing or two about my life, right? So that never works. So I don't tell people I'm an expert in the slightest. I just tell them my stories and things I needed, things that I need still to hear every day. And so kind of how I define this woke brown girl is that she is brown. And there's like this cultural brownness that is referenced a lot. And I remember when I wrote this woke brown girl, somebody in the Huffington Post commented like, we're not all brown, like you need to stop limiting us. And I was like, okay, yes, but I need this story. And this is addressing a particular experience and a particular person that is brown, and she's gonna get this. So I wrote this story about the politics of pigmentation that I wanna read because it does address kind of this culture, this like real brownness, not this cultural brownness. And so, I'll read it. My mommy tells me to get out the sun. My mommy tells me to put on sunblock. My mommy tells me to not go to the beach so much. But she's not protecting me from skin cancer. She's not telling me to stay out of the sun for a deep concern for my health. But my mommy does not want me to be too brown. You see, my mommy's from the mountains of Jinotega, Nicaragua. The mountains where the temperature stays at a cool 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It's always foggy, and everyone wears a sweater. My mommy, like many of her townspeople, is light-skinned. But she's not as light-skinned as my aunts. The running joke is, because my mom's the oldest, that la raza mejoró with every child my grandmother had. My mommy is born of a green-eyed, light brown-haired, light-skinned man who actually has an Afro-Nicaraguense mom, but we don't talk about my great-grandmother. Everyone just kind of hopes and wishes that my grandfather's light-eyed genes will be on one of the kids, like the grandkids, because it like skipped all his kids. I, however, have my papi's genes. My papi's side of the family is darker. They have black-brown hair, brown skin, and indigenous features. My papi is not ashamed of his brown features. Instead, he loves them. He sits in the sun unfettered, while my mom wears a hat, sunglasses, and a long sleeve if she can. But my papi is a male, and standards of admiration for men stem from their ability to perform manhood. Women, on the other hand, in my context, have to be somebody to someone through our aesthetics, our preferably whiter, fragile aesthetics. My mommy tells me to get out the sun. My mommy tells me to put on sunblock. My mommy tells me to not go to the beach so much because I have my papi's brownness but my mommy's gender, and that's a curse. I was born female and brown in a culture that hates females and especially hates the darker ones. But avoiding the sun feels unnatural and distasteful, knowing full well that the politics of pigmentation have been telling my people that being brown is bad and getting browner is your own damn fault. It is also a class thing, because despite having grown up poor, nobody wants to look like they've sown their own fields, thus exposed to the sun for an untold amount of hours. It is shameful to own our poverty, and more shameful if your skin starts to tell the tales of your misfortunes. My mommy tells me to get out the sun. My mommy tells me to put on sunblock. My mommy tells me to not go to the beach so much. My mom tells me I'm becoming negra with rechazo in her tongue. But I cannot undo the fact that my skin absorbs the sun rays like magic. My skin turns vitamin D into nutrients and makes my skin glow. You ask me what color my skin tone is, and I will tell you it is Mayan gold. I do not burn in the sun, I evolve. My brown skin is beautiful, and in the winter it's lighter, and in the summer it's darker, that I have to change my makeup with the seasons to match my skin tone. My skin is supernatural. I love my brown skin, but it's taken years to realize that and to undo the years of sun avoidance dance that many of us darker-skinned Latinx are told to do. My mommy tells me to get out the sun. My mommy tells me to put on sunblock. My mommy tells me to not go to the beach so much, and I understand what she's doing. I understand what her life has taught her about her brownness, but I respectfully decline to let the color of my skin and gender make me hide under gorros and sombreros. I refuse to incomodarme for a culture that breeds colorism. Instead, I wear the smallest bikini I own, and I go to the beach, and I put on sunblock to protect my beautiful brown skin that I've been blessed with, and I watch magic happen. Being Latino means that we're not a race. We're very vast and very different. And growing up in the South, I grew very aware of the color of my skin. Not growing up in the South, going to school in the South. And when the South is very black and white. And they have every reason to be. But when somebody who's brown goes into a context and is continually told, but you don't belong here and you don't belong here, but these are the only two categories you've got, you kind of start to get uncomfortable, and you're like, well, then I'm gonna make myself really visible, and my brownness is gonna be in your face. So when I talk about this woke brown girl, it's intentionally saying, no, brown is real. There's a real experience that goes with this skin tone. There's a very real embedded colorism in our culture that affects the brown ones of us also. Because they say it's just try a little harder and you'll get to the good side. That's kind of where you rock. And I get that colorism is rooted in survival, but it's not justified. I get that it's rooted in colonialism and seeing kind of these people come into our lands and tell us you're inferior, breed with us, and then we'll make you better. I get what all that is about, but we still keep perpetuating this thing, and we still keep telling our little girls to not go to the beach so much and to not be in the sun as long. So then there's a point where we have to like snap ourselves out of this mentality and snap our parents out of this mentality. I don't know if you guys have read De las Casas, if there's any like historians here, but he was like, he was a Spaniard, right? And so he's like considered right now by historians like to be like the savior of the indigenous people. Like, cause he was like, don't kill them, right? But if you read De las Casas' letters, he's like, these people can be redeemed. These inferior animals are not as bad as you think. Like, these letters are really graphic and really violent, and it's a mentality that's still carried on in our communities. So so I don't identify as mestiza ever. Like, I will never like reclaim that, you know, like we do this thing where like queers are like, we're not, queer was used against us, so now we're like, queer is like political. Call yourself queer is like really important in the LGBTQIA community. I can't do that with mestizos at all. Because that term was used when the Spanish were like, we're gonna have sex with y'all. We have wives at home, we're gonna have sex with you, consensual or not, to make you better, and we're gonna create this new race, but you're not gonna be Spaniards because you're not gonna be as good as us. They still have some of you all in it. So let's call you all mestizos. Cool. And you guys are gonna call yourselves that forever. So now I'm like, no, I don't want that shit. You keep your mestizo. I'm just gonna say I'm in the diaspora, in the indigenous diaspora, because shit happens. Colonialism is real, but I don't need your little label that you created for us to validate our existence. So this long history of disassociating ourselves from indigeneity is like something we've like clung on to. Again, it's for survival, but when you're born with the wrong gender and the wrong skin tone, this woke brown girl resonates. I grew up being called India a lot, and this was always an insult. Like, this is still an insult. Like any little kid, you call him you call her or him or them an Indio, it's like, you're gonna start some shit right now, right? And it's like these terms, like, you know how every country has like oh my God, we're gonna talk about Colombians, and everybody will like bring up this slur. Or like, when we talk about Cubans, we like talk about like, there's a slur. What's the slur? You know it. No, it's, everybody does the row, in Miami, right? There's a lot of Cubans. Everybody's like, row, row, row your boat. Yeah, exactly. When you talk about Nicaraguenses, you call them tiraflechas. When you talk about Colombians, you talk about the narcos, like cocaine. When you talk, right? We have like all these slurs. But like my country gets like, you are, ugh. Like we're gonna pick your insults to be like what we all are, but y'all are more, right? So I grew up being told, like I remember I had this boyfriend who was so cute in 7th grade. His name was Jonathan. Jonathan, but you know, like we all pretend we're American when we're first year. So he was Colombian, and he was so sexy. He had like hazel eyes, because we like those things. We're told to like those things. And he was like brown, and he had like his pants were like the lowest of lows, and they didn't fall. He like belted it perfectly. And I was like in love. And then he's like, oh, you gotta meet my friends. And it was like day 2, you know, we were getting serious. So he's like, gotta meet my friends. So I met his friends, and one of the girls just looked at me up and down, and she just started laughing. And she's like, you're dating an Indian. And she just walked away. She said that in front of my face. And I was like, right? Like by that time you like think, like you're this is like middle school, right? Like you're putting on makeup and you got your like little skirts on. You're like, I got it. I'm like the hottest shit in this room, right? And so like to be like jolted back into this like, but don't forget. Woke brown girl. To be a woke brown girl, I make this argument for the sake of like, this is a narrative that comes out of me. So you do have to be Latina. So understand what it means to like straddle 2 worlds, to be in the diaspora. And it's not a title that is unique to, like nobody can be like, you're not Latina enough, right? Like Latinidad isn't based on like you have like a lineage that has made what is here in front of you, right? I hate the you're not Latina enough or you're too, I've been called too Latina and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, who's gay? Who's got the meter here? So, so I think being Latina, you kind of understand that you're a product of hate and rechazo from like the larger, more appeasing white narrative. Your roots are kind of full of oppression and survival for you to even be here. And there's not one narrative to be Latina. And Latinidad isn't guarded by anybody. Surprise. That was new to me, moving to Nashville and having I had those moments with a lot of new Latinos. I didn't even understand. It was they were mixed and they were coming into their Latinidad and they were like, I've never felt Latina. And I'm just like, I mean, you kind of are. You're like that Latina who wasn't allowed to be Latina because your parents preferred this other culture, and that's still an experience, and it's a valid experience, and you're not alone. Just go to Texas for a little bit, right? No, right? Yeah, it's true. So I'm just but it was new to me in Nashville, meeting a lot of Latinos who were really, really distraught by this newness in their identity, and I'm like, okay. That's your story. You have to be from a working poor context. And this I say because woke brown girl has these markers that are written on our bodies, our clothes, the way we act. It's all of these things, right? We're that exciting person people want to be around. They're like, oh my gosh, she's so animated, right? But these expressions and these modes of talking and that's very class related. I remember for 3 years straight at Vanderbilt, I was there for 4 years. It's a 3.5-year program. For 3 years straight, somebody asked me, can I dress like you for Halloween? And I was like, no, bitch. This isn't a costume. When you grow up like a chonga, what you're wearing is your currency. And how you're dressing and how you're moving through the world is very important to you. I remember even when we went to the supermercado, right? When we went to the real store in Nicaragua, it was brush your hair, put on your Sunday clothes. You don't want to look like you're stealing. So that was your currency. That's how you made yourself fit in that space. And then when I was in Miami, in that barrio, that's how I made myself fit into that space. And so when people are like, I want to dress like you for Halloween, I was like, but I look so beautiful. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I was like, I spent hours on this. You can't replicate. Oh, you're making fun of me. Oh, well, you're a classist, right? Because code switching is crucial to our communities, and the way that we dress in these spaces. I remember there was only one Latino faculty in my whole program, and he was Cuban, really into respectability politics, wore a bow tie or a tie and a cardigan and a button down every day with khakis. And for April Fools, all these white students dressed up as him. And I was like, you don't know what it's like to be Latino. You don't know about respectability politics. You don't know what he's been like. He has a thick accent. You don't know what it's like to move in through those spaces like that. So why is this funny to you? Why is the way he's chosen to move through the world to get respected, to whatever, funny to you? So only a working poor, or from a working poor context, Latina will kind of understand what it's like to kind of code switch, and what it's like to how you dress is your livelihood, and it's how you feel connected. I don't want to read that. Woke brown girl. Okay, so to be a woke brown girl, you gotta be woke, right? Then otherwise you're just a brown girl. Which is cool, but we gotta bring you somewhere. And I have a love-hate relationship with the word woke. I'm like, I get it, you're woke, we're all woke, everyone's asleep, okay, right? But it can get really redundant and really old, and you're just because it becomes really pompous, I'm woke, right? But it's still a word that I can recognize somebody, if I'm at a bar and I'm somebody says something about, I just hear oppression, I'm like, you woke, right? It's just like, it becomes this thing that you can like recognize people from. So you gotta be woke. Because being woke means usually that your parents are not woke. Because you had to become woke. You weren't just like, and this is what I've always been because my mom told me I was equal to everyone, right? Like you had to like come out of that to be woke. So it means that your parents like, my mom, I tell everybody, my mom is so proud of me, but she's so confused by me. Like she tells people all the time, she's like, oh my God, my Priscilla's so smart. She's so funny. Like when I'm not in the room. I'm in the room and she's like, why are you not married? I'm like, I tell people a story. In April I broke my elbow. I was riding my bike. So I moved home for a year after graduating. Going to white serving institutions, especially at a graduate level, is the most excruciating experience I've ever been to. And so I knew I wasn't going to be in insurance anymore. I had gotten into a program to keep going to school, and I was like, I can't do it because I'm already like on autopilot. So my mom's like, come home. She's like, te ves flaca, I'll feed you. She's like, don't pay rent. Like, she's like, just come home. That's the thing about Latino parents, like, just go home. And that's it, like, that you're home. So I was like, yeah, done deal. And so I went home, and I was there all last year until, like, June of this year. And, like, the good thing about college is that you get to see, like, a therapist. It's part of, like, your packet, right? I didn't have a therapist anymore, and so I was like, how to deal with anxiety. And they were like, exercise is good. So I got on this bike. It was like my mission. I was doing like 30 miles a day. I was like, you can't be anxious if you're tired. It's so real. You don't even know. So I was like, I'm on it, right? But it was like 30 miles is a long time for your mind. It would just be like bike, right? So like, I was like in my thoughts. And I just like looked away and I was thinking about like a pitch I was sending to my editor and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna write Dominique. And then I like fell off the sidewalk into the road, face first, and with my elbow, the whole bike fell on top of me, like flipped. And I thought I had like a chipped tooth because I fell like right here. It was like this swollen my lip. I had a speaking engagement in Chicago the next day. I looked very woke. And so I called my dad. I feel my arm. I called my mom first, obviously, and she didn't pick up. And so I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I think like I fell and I think I broke my arm. And he's like, Gina, because you all have nicknames, right? Like you're flaca, China, whatever. So my dad's like, Gina, eso no alcanza mi carrito. He's like, you gotta get back. Can you get back? And I'm like, I was like, I got a dose of independence in Vanderbilt. Okay. And so I like was biking back. I was like, okay, you gotta like get your shit together. Like that's what you do when you're not with mom and dad. And like I'm biking back with one hand, like I had this hand like this, like swinging. It was bad. And I'm like biking and like it was bad. And my mom called me like 2 minutes later. She's like, where are you? And I'm like, okay, I'm in this intersection. She gets there. My mom drives like an old little Fiat. And she has rheumatoid arthritis. And when you're in the hood, like, okay, you know how like you have like white people have like their sports bike and their road bike and their mountain bike. Like they have like all these different bicycles, like some are lighter for whatever. When you're in the hood, you got one bike and it weighs like 100 pounds and you got it at Walmart and like you can't put that shit anywhere and you can definitely not carry it. And here's my rheumatoid arthritis mom in fucking her little Fiat just like pushing it in. She put it in. She like carried me to the car basically, like sat me down, put on my seatbelt, we went to the house. She like washed me up. We went to the emergency room and I'm like, my mom loves me. Like I'm like, I love being home. And in the emergency room, one of my articles published about my brother. And the first line reads, my brother is the first emotionally abusive relationship I've had with any man. And it came out in the waiting room. And my mom has alerts now. So she got this alert. She started reading it next to me, like Google Translate. Like she works hard. She's like, I'm going to get at you. I'm going to get what you're saying. So she Googled it and she's reading it. And I'm like, And she turns to me and she's like, eso no se dice. Hay cosas que se quedan en la casa. And I was like, she's like, I know you're doing it for clicks now. And I'm like, I went from like being like, I love my mom, to being like, oh my gosh, she does not get it at all. So like, that's what it's like to be a woke brown girl. I want to read before I end my piece on woke brown girls, because I think it's kind of important to kind of have this like bring you back, especially that woke brown girl in here, or those of you who identify with this narrative. Dear woke brown girl, you are eternal. You're neither here nor there, but everywhere. You carry the hood in your veins and the academy in your heart. You have not forgotten where you come from, but have learned and earned your way into spaces not meant for you, spaces that are uninviting to your kind. You're poderosa like that. Your vocabulary is vast, and your wit is sharp. You are unstoppable. You feel everything and feel nothing. You carry loads of pain for the displacement you felt due to your need to question everything. But you have had to accept living this confused and living this awake, because once you've heard your chains rattle, you cannot unhear them. You do this for you, but you do this for your mommy, and you do this for your papi, and your little sister who does not seem to understand herself outside the boxes that our cultura has placed her in. You belong to no one, but you're accountable to many. La raza depends on you. La raza depends on you. Do not let anyone else tell you differently. You complicate respectability politics, and you don't give a fuck that you're doing it. Do you, woke brown girl? You have a fire burning inside of you, and that comes from your mommy's side. You are going places that no one in your family has ever been, and you're fearful of your fearlessness. You shine, and you're too much shine for most people. Your passion scares them. You've been told to simmer down, to lower your voice. You've been told that you're inappropriate. People have snickered about you because they do not understand that you're not up for consumption. You have not allowed them to be comfortable around you, so you're the enemy. Your laugh carries liberation in it. Men have tried to pin you down. Partners have tried to pin you down. They have tried to claim you, but you've resisted because you don't belong to anyone. You belong entirely to yourself. No one can hold that much glitter in their hands. Glitter is messy, overpowering, and beautiful. Woke brown girl, you are remarkable. You were never meant to be held within one pair of hands, within one brain, within one soul. You were never meant to belong to anyone. Nobody can hold the sun, much less hold you and all of your brilliance. Your parents brag about you while telling you to be like their friends' daughters who have husbands and children. But it's because you're ground perking that they do not know what to do with you. They have not been able to hold your fire for some time now, and it's okay, because it's your turn to hold them in your heart and in your mind as you dismantle oppressive structures that have kept people like your parents down, but not you, woke brown girl. So you owe it to them to keep fighting. You outwit just about everyone in your path. You were always quick on your feet. You always knew that people around you were trying to take your feet right from under you, and you learned to deal with it. You learned how to thrive without legs. You learned how to make it when everyone around you swore you never would. You are and always have been unstoppable because you've learned to become strong enough for you and your unreachable dreams. You became the scariest, the strongest, and the smartest person in any room because you didn't have a choice. Woke brown girl, you are the scariest human being who exists because you were born with the wrong shade on your flesh, the wrong gender, and you're from the wrong hood. Yet here you stand without a quiver in your lip, spitting at the face of oppression, and for that reason alone, you are special. Don't let them take away your passion, because they're going to try, without any compassion, to keep you down. Remember that without your passion, you will extinguish. And if for some reason you do, and you might, there's going to be other woke brown girls around you to hold you up and light you up again. Because woke brown girl, we need each other. That's it. It could be anything. It's really fun. This is my favorite part. Hi.
So I visited Vanderbilt this summer, and I witnessed the same polar communities that you were talking about. And I think I saw in one of your posts how you were trying to start kind of like a Latino community over there. And I think consistent with like a history of building community and so forth. Now, how do you build a community at a time, how do you reconcile building a community at the same time when you kind of need support yourself?
Well, I think it's important to build community, and I've kind of focused. So when I started, Latinos of Nashville is the thing we started in Nashville. I was very clear because of LR and because I tend to travel a lot. I was very clear that I couldn't head it. I kind of know my limitations. And so I was like, I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna be at those spaces, but I'm not always gonna be like, I'm gonna be the person that, like, I told her, I was like, I'm the pull. Like, I'll tell people and I'll spread the news, and like people show up to our meetings because they're like, yeah, it's like everywhere on LR. But I'm like really aware that I'm not trying to like be the superstar at all in like every space or even like many spaces. I feel like I have a lot of energy and I put a lot of it into LR, and so I'm left with like very little after that. And it's just like self-care to be willing to be in those communities, but kind of know that I can't always be giving so much of myself.
So my first question was about like parents. How do you do that? So like I know you talked about like how like your parents are conservative and they're like not woke in like the sense of like they don't have this language. How do we kind of help with that? And just
So I don't have like a recipe, but I notice patterns, and so like you read a lot, you read enough to know like to have language for stuff and then kind of figure it out. So I started reading a lot about female communities being really important in a lot of working poor Latinx contexts. And so that community of women and kind of this, like the research was saying like Latina women are like, it was like a commentary on like why Paquita de Barrio was like super popular, right? And they're like, why do all these women show up to this male bashing like songstress, whatever, artist things, and they act like they're in alabanza y adoración, like with their hands up, like, yes, woman, yes, rata de dos patas, yes, right? And so it was like commentary on that, and it was saying like, there's something about female communities, and there's something about sexism, which I don't think it's any more than in the US. Machismo is just a direct translation. It's not like, this like, woo, the scary brown people treat their women bad. No, it's the same exact thing. And so it was like, in working for Latino communities, where there is sort of a matriarchy that is kind of in our culture, women need to get together to like dog on men, right? So I was like, I'm going home. I'm gonna make the community with my mom, right? And I'm like, so I'm home, and I was like dating at this point, and I was like, yeah, I hate them all. They're stupid, and they're so disrespectful, and like, right? Like I was telling her really honest things, and she's like, yeah. And so we started having like this real conversations. Like I was like, I read it in theory, and now I'm living it in life, right? But like not in a very, I wasn't coming at her like, this is what I read in the book, Mom, and I think that we should practice, like, right? Like I was just like, no, how does this actually look like with my mom? Because I was making real complaints. I wasn't like making out these complaints. They're coming from my heart, from my soul. Like I was like fed up. And so from that, we've been able to have very real conversations around like sexism that she's never had with me before. Like the other day, my dad screamed at her, and she called me. She's like, if you were here, he would have never done that. And I was like, yes, like we're good. We're doing the thing, right? Like, so for me, it's been like, I've done all the theories and I've done all the reading. What does it actually look like at home? And like committing to being in those spaces with my parents. And it took months for my mom and I to kind of move that conversation to where it is now, like at least 7 months. But now we have really great conversation. Like when I left home, I'm living with my lover now. Living, like, oh my God. My parents are Pentecostal preachers. And I'm living with my boyfriend. And my mom, she gave me a bendición before I left. She's like, and her bendición was beautiful. Like she's like, you will never feel trapped with any man. And I believe in you. And you need to do this. And you need to see what it's like. But I was like I had gotten married to leave the house, you know? Like I had done the thing. Like I really committed to like pleasing them. And suddenly she's like, your lifestyle is okay with me. I was like, what the fuck? So I started from like having those real on the ground conversations with my mom where I wasn't preachy. I was just trying to like connect. Yeah. But my dad, I don't know, we'd like, I don't know. We tolerate each other. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Okay, cool. You had a lot. What was the other one?
Oh. So the other was, I remember it now. So like respectability politics and like safety and like how do you like balance being like I don't want to like have to respect you, but at the same time how do I do that for my safety? I know you kind of mentioned like the snap moment, like we just kind of like it's not about like pleasing people who we know aren't going to please us, but like how do you kind of go about that? Because like that's been an issue.
I kind of I made a very real decision, and I only had to confront it as a cis, feminine, hyper-feminine woman. I only had to confront it in a very real way when I went to El Salvador. And I was like packing my crop tops and my skirts, and they were like, because I have a lot of tattoos. In Latin America, you don't get a lot of tattoos. It's become trendier now, but the maras are really what's associated with tattoos. And El Salvador is known for their maras. And so I was wearing these really like revealing, scandalous clothes, right? I was packing it. And that was the first time where I was confronted with safety. I have like safety concerns as a woman and in the rape culture all the time. But those are like in the back, those are almost so ingrained that they're always in the back of my mind. But when I was going to El Salvador, and then everybody starts telling you, like people, outsiders are like, it's super dangerous there. Like, okay, kids grow up there, people die at a very old age there, like, okay, whatever is dangerous is like through your lens of whatever that means. But yeah, it was the first time I started packing and I was like, are you ready to face whatever consequences that you've made about your body and the way you dress in like real time, like in your face? And I was like, if I don't, then what am I doing all this for? Is it just like a fun thing I do and people are like, look at her be so scandalous and forward thinking, right? And then like when push comes to shove, I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm gonna wear a long sleeve turtleneck now, right? So I made a very real decision, and I'm like, this is my body, and these are my politics, and I'm gonna stick with them. Yeah. But it wasn't easy, and it was like, Vanderbilt had a conversation with me, and they were like, you have to make this, you have to know that we're not necessarily happy with what you're doing. And I was like, okay, thanks. Noted. But yeah. Yes?
I just wanted to say I'm super fan girl. You're amazing.
Yay.
Yeah. So I was going through pieces on kind of your religious upbringing, and that was kind of the first time I ever actually saw myself, and just like people who and like went through like predominantly white spaces in the educational like experience, and were navigating like trying to be like woke and things like that. And I don't know, like I had never like read or like been exposed to anyone who like had similar upbringings as me, especially like growing up in a Pentecostal like household where like parents like super strict about everything you had to do. So I was just wondering if you could like, I don't know, like through academia I think that I've distanced myself in some ways from religion and spirituality because like I've seen these things as like social constructs that like were used as oppressive tools to like to oppress people and things like that, right? So and I think reading your piece really complicated that and gave me more like context, like how you know this specific type of like kind of being Pentecostal was kind of like in response to being rejected from like other types of forms of religion and things like that. So I was just wondering kind of like your process with reconciling all that. And I don't know, like I don't know like talking about religion is like really like
No, I love it.
yeah, but like I don't know, like I think it's important to talk about because I think that for me that's always been something that I struggle with
Yeah.
in terms of spirituality and just like almost hiding that part of me and like because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. So what I've started doing, and I've been doing it for a while, and I love that it's picked up like in the Latinx community. So I've started calling myself a bruja only in the sense that bruja is a term that's used for like people who are doing other kind of religions, like the bad stuff, right? And so I've been like I try to like fuse a lot of stuff, which is like also rejected in like a lot of streamlined thoughts or anything. So I do a lot of like candles. I like think of like I'm inventing it as I go along and what feels organic with me now. And so I light candles, and I like recently I got pregnant and I had to terminate the pregnancy, and I lit a candle the whole time it was happening because I took the pill, and I lit the candle and I was just like whatever ancestors look for me, care about me, love on me. I was just like, just think of me as it's happening to me. And that, like, I'm not Pentecostal anymore. I uphold it, especially in spaces that reject Pentecostalism, especially like elite spaces that are like those people, right? But I also I do believe that there is a God. I think she's female, and I think that she looks like me. I think that she has a purple vagina. Like I say all this in a lot of like spaces. Like I think that she cries with me. I think that she holds my grandma's hands when I needed her to talk to my grandma. I think like all that stuff. But it just always has to feel organic to me, and it can never feel performative. It can never, because I feel like that's one thing I resented about Pentecostalism. Not only was it telling me don't dress like this, don't think like this, don't be like this, but it was also like, but this is how you worship, and this is how you pray, and this is how you are a good person or whatever. And so it can never feel performative. It has to feel real, and it can never be imposing on other people. But it's complicated, and it's like really dense, and also really easy. I feel like it's really organic. And I feel like that's the way it was always supposed to be. I read a lot of Duaa, who does a lot of reclaiming of our indigenous religions. And so I like that, but she's also doing a lot of like puzzle pieces. Like it isn't, if you know a lot about Aztec religions or Mayan religions, she's like picking pieces also. And I think that's why I like that. And that's what inspired me to be like, okay, I can do this too. I can like somebody was like, here's this guy and he's gonna interpret the scripture for you, and now you guys are Church of Christ, right? Like that's how denominations have like essentially come out. Like, and it's usually been people in power and it's usually been white men. Why can't we do that as women of color? And so that's kind of it for me. Yeah. Any more? I think we're done. Oh, hi.
Hi, Maureen. I just wanted to know, like, how did you close that gap in your education from, like, going from, like, what you said, the hood, to, like, going to, like, a almost white majority institution? How do you, like, ease that gap? Because I'm kind of struggling with that, too, as well.
I don't think I eased it. I just, like, created a community. I became, like, the Latino police. Like, I would be in a class, and they'd be like, somebody would have an accent, and I'd be like, I looked and searched and found those people that were like, this place is weird as fuck, right? Right? And that was like, it didn't make it better, it just made me have like a hub. But I was totally that girl that was like, Guzman, your last name, or Guzman, right? Like I was totally that girl. But it made it easy and easier. But I still graduated and felt like I was dying, and still graduated and needed to go home. So I don't know if I like beat it. I don't know if you can. But you guys have a lot. You guys have a nice chunk of people. No, okay. I had like 4. But they were like chingonas to the core, and I was like, so I'm like, I have an alpha personality, and with them, I'm like super like sub. I'm like, yes, talk. I'm like, talk to me. Yeah. But you guys have a lot more. That's something, right? Yeah. Yeah.